In a world where cutthroat tactics are common, staying ahead means looking further down the road than others. Don't forget to subscribe for the next lesson. If this breakdown changed the way you view power and conflict, give the video a thumbs up so it can help others. This is how power grows. You become too costly to attack. It's not about wiping out your opponents, it's about teaching people lessons in a way that they actually learn, not because you demanded it, but because they do. You'll likely observe fewer challenges and less pressure over time, not because you demanded it, but because they learned. Eventually, the fighting ends quietly. You outlast them by being dependable, steady, and unpredictable. Meanwhile, those who play dirty burn out because they can't keep control without escalating things. One calm response might not mean much, but 10 of them can carve out your identity. It's built through repetition, not just claims of reputation. Your perspective shifts, you stop asking how to win and start wondering what you want to be known for. That alone can prevent many reactive errors. You're in it for the long haul, where every interaction is an investment, freeing you from dependence on quick results. This approach also shields you mentally, not by threatening anyone, but through your established history. Once your reputation is set, it creates a barrier for anyone tempted to play dirty again. Reputation does what tactics can only start. It turns short-term discipline into long-lasting protection. And all this without any grand gestures. That's the key. The doors that used to swing wide begin to close. Support starts to fade. Opportunities shrink. Trust diminishes. And all this goes down without any dramatic actions. That's the essence of it. There's no epic showdown, no dramatic downfall for your rivals. Instead, something much quieter occurs. Many never reach this endgame because it demands restraint over time. A ruler with a strong reputation hardly needs to lift a finger. However, someone feared only in battle is always in for another fight. Niccolò Machiavelli believed that the most effective power is the type that doesn't require action. Reputations form through contrast, so your steadiness itself becomes a form of contrast. You don't chase validation, you don't show your emotions. You don't swing between silence and outrage, you stay steady, calm under pressure, measured in your reactions, and consistent in your professionalism. Your role is simple but tough. Drama surrounds them, conflict chases them, and urgency follows their name. But over time, a pattern emerges. At first, dirty players may seem successful. They push too hard, overextend themselves, and apply unwanted pressure. They might not engage verbally, remaining neutral, but they are watching closely. While most focus on winning immediate arguments, others are unconsciously taking notes on behavior. Every interaction leaves a mark: tone, timing, calmness, escalation. The way behavior solidifies into reputation. Once established, a reputation can end conflicts before they even start. What dirty players often overlook is the longer narrative. They want noise and visible damage, but they don't consider the long game. When people resort to dirty tactics, they aim for wins based on emotional responses. The final tactic is the most patient and hardest to undo. It doesn't require confrontation or exposure but leans on memory, patterns, and how people adapt their behavior toward you after everything settles down. And once there's nothing to grab onto, even the worst tactics can backfire. Calm isn't weakness, it's an absence of leverage. When they play dirty, don't match their intensity, remove it. The one who remains unaffected emotionally is the one with influence. Over time, this method shapes behavior. People realize emotional tactics don't work on you. They either adapt to a cleaner approach or completely walk away. Both scenarios benefit you. The goal isn't to feel nothing, it's to keep your cards close to your chest. You can acknowledge feelings internally without broadcasting them out. Yet again, you did nothing. You simply choose not to react publicly. What began as concern becomes coercion. This pressure reveals their true intent. Sharper language, tighter deadlines, louder accusations. When attempts at emotional manipulation fall flat, they often double down. A ruler who appears unmoved conveys security, leverage, and foresight. Machiavelli recognized that authority is shown through composure. Dirty tactics lose their punch when they can't seize your emotional response. You are free to think, observe, and make choices instead of reacting. Anxiety shortens timelines by draining interactions of emotion. You maintain your strategic focus. Fear leads to poor decisions, and anger narrows options. Emotions warp your judgment, especially your own. That contrast is power, and observers pick up on it without even realizing it. One side looks unstable, the other looks in control. They escalate while you stay steady. This steadiness creates an imbalance in perception. Calm is more than silence, it's about consistency. Without obvious reactions, they can't gauge their pressure. They won't know if they're winning or losing or if you're taking them seriously. That uncertainty disrupts manipulators more effectively than confrontation ever could. Denying them emotional reactions isn't being passive, it's depriving them. Emotion fuels them and confirms their influence. It shows them where to exert pressure next. The moment you give it, you surrender both information and momentum. Dirty players don't think logically, they thrive on reactions like anger, fear, defensiveness, and urgency. Once an attack is documented, it changes from a weapon into a liability. When they resort to dirty tactics, don't rush to confront or expose them. Slow things down, maintain the interaction. Emotional responses cloud documentation. Clear accounts strengthen it. Documentation should be straightforward, neutral, and restrained, no emotionality or interpretations. Let the sequence of events tell the story. Discipline is key. If things escalate to the point of involving authorities or mediators, you'll have already established a foundation. You won't be piecing together events under stress, you'll be presenting a timeline. This is about defense, not vindictiveness. You're not gathering evidence for revenge, you're insulating yourself. Sometimes, just having that documentation is sufficient. It quietly alters the incentives. Behavior improves, pressure eases, and attacks become less frequent and intense. You might never need to unveil the records publicly. Plus, there's added leverage for the future. This constraint forces either a retreat or exposure. Both those outcomes favor you. Every new action needs to align with what's already documented. This constraint makes it impossible for them to adjust their narrative subtly or deny established patterns. Once a record is in place, a psychological shift occurs. A ruler who controls the documents governs judgment, since judgment isn't immediate, it's retrospective. Records determine who seems reckless and who appears composed. Machiavelli believed power solidifies when actions are preserved, and only those actions that can't withstand scrutiny need ambiguity. Clean intentions have no fear of documentation. Resistance to that documentation is informative. They may resist, mock it, or label it unnecessary, but manipulators hate it. The aggressor must stick to their words instead of improvising. Memory yields to evidence, and emotion gives way to structure. By insisting on written records, formal processes, summaries, or confirmations, you eliminate the haze that dirty tactics rely on. This is where you regain the upper hand. You don't counter the attack, you document it. Dirty players depend on one crucial element: impermanence. They want pressure without proof, implications without traces, and harm without accountability. Nothing rattles a manipulator faster than realizing they're no longer the focal point. Let them speak into the silence, because nothing destabilizes them quicker than realizing they're no longer the center of attention. Don't react publicly. Don't mirror their intensity. Don't reward their performances. If they seek visibility, starve it. When they resort to dirty tactics, ask yourself one question: do they want control, or do they want to be seen? Either way, both threats diminish without direct confrontation. Their behavior stops or becomes self-defeating. Over time, they learn theatrical antics yield no advantage. You ignore provocations without ignoring facts. You filter out what matters, staying engaged where it matters and absent where it doesn't. Silence should be intentional, not passive. This tactic calls for discipline. People trust the figure who doesn't need to declare their power. When one party remains calm and procedural while the other grows loud and emotional, authority shifts automatically. Either way, they incur a cost, you do not. Retreat undermines their ego, while escalation tarnishes their credibility. By withholding your attention, you force a choice: escalate or retreat. Vanity accelerates exposure. The one who resists being seen holds dominion over the one who craves validation. Machiavelli noted that men driven by recognition are easy to manipulate. The more they strive for visibility, the more apparent they become. Tones sharpen, language exaggerates, and behavior turns theatrical. Observers start to catch on, not because you pointed it out but because the excess reveals itself naturally. This tactic is particularly effective because it turns their strengths into weaknesses. They are the ones performing, but no one is clapping. You're engaging with outcomes rather than personalities. You recognize substance without yielding to drama. You respond selectively. The moment you see they need attention, you stop feeding it. They crave reactions, witnesses, and acknowledgement. They escalate not because the tactic demands it but because being ignored feels suffocating. Their power hinges on being acknowledged as a threat. That's where you find leverage. Silent allies may not be dramatic, but they are decisive. As the conflict winds down, you'll realize you were never alone. Power doesn't always announce itself. Often, its influence is invisible: a delayed decision, a dismissed rumor, a preserved opportunity. The last discipline is patience. Decisions rarely rely solely on facts, they depend on patterns. Silent allies ensure that the patterns associated with you convey discipline, not drama. If things escalate formally, your history of behavior works in your favor. There's also defense in this tactic. Time is your ally here. Manipulators act quickly and damage trust, while you move at a measured pace and build it up. The aim isn't to seek sympathy but to earn respect. Respect endures scrutiny, while sympathy fades. Revealing emotions creates biases against you. Oversharing costs credibility. Building silent allies requires restraint. Unannounced support can be activated later or never, depending on what works in your favor. Silent allies play three roles: they validate perceptions, constrain aggressors, and offer leverage. The strongest ruler is not the one with the loudest supporters but the one whose allies believe their alignment is their own idea. Machiavelli observed that power grows when others act in your interest without needing instruction. You give minimal factual context when it suits you, never charged emotionally or accusatory. This indicates confidence and invites trust. People are more likely to back someone who doesn't seek it. Consistency builds alliances quicker than arguments do. Calm reactions, measured language, and predictable professionalism are key. It starts with behavior, not persuasion. Your goal isn't to shout them into submission, it's to arrange things in such a way that they convince themselves. Dirty players often think the conflict is solely between you and them. That belief is their blind spot. Every manipulation occurs within a social context: colleagues, peers, onlookers, decision-makers. These individuals may not intervene, but they are constantly making judgments. Power isn't exercised in isolation, it's amplified through alignment. When people resort to dirty tactics, the instinct is to fight solo, defensively, quietly. This may seem honorable, but it's also a strategic weakness. Leaving an issue unresolved isn't a loss, it's a burden for them to carry. Leave while there are still questions. Don't look for closure. Don't chase understanding. Don't stick around to clean up the mess. When they go dirty, don't linger to tidy things up. Power lies with the one who doesn't need it. The last word often weakens the speaker. Resist that urge. The temptation to get in the last word is strong. This tactic requires you to exercise self-control. Keeping your options open is crucial. You can return later from a stronger position or never return at all. Both scenarios are to your advantage. Once a resolution is found, the story wraps up, and once closed, stories can't be reshaped. By keeping the situation open, you maintain options. Leaving early also helps you retain leverage. Over time, the unresolved nature of the conflict casts doubt on the aggressor, not you. Silence can begin to look like confidence while persistence can come off as desperation. Observers note who's composed enough to walk away and who keeps pushing for a reaction. This also offers a reputational edge. Departing without resolution suggests that you don't need validation, agreement, or permission. A leader who exits unpredictably keeps authority intact, while one who hangs around until they get what they want reveals dependency. Machiavelli believed that power lies in controlling conclusions. You move on. This imbalance is subtle dominance. They replay conversations, second-guess moves, and worry about consequences. Unresolved conflicts weigh heavily on the psyche. The mind seeks closure. By withholding it, you force the other party to bear the discomfort alone. This doesn't mean storming off or making dramatic statements, it means calmly disengaging while the issue is still in flux. Cutting ties before resolution disrupts the cycle. Resolving things usually benefits the aggressor. Dirty players thrive on prolonged engagement. Each discussion gives them chances to reframe, provoke, extract emotions, or rewrite narratives. The longer you linger, the more variables they can control. The moment you seek closure, you signal need, and need is leverage they will seize. Most might think power comes from settling disputes, clearing the air, reaching resolution, or departing with mutual understanding. That mindset is comforting but strategically perilous when others fight dirty. Any blame that's discovered can't simply be deflected. Allow silence and structure to accuse on your behalf. Let others know what you won't articulate. Set the stage for accountability to become inescapable. When they play dirty, avoid accusing, cornering, or demanding accountability. The moment perceptions shift, they're usually irreparable. Resolutions might take longer, but gradual conclusions tend to be more stable. You must embrace ambiguity, understanding that slower resolutions can be more enduring. Resist the urge for immediate exposure. This requires discipline. Indirect redirection speaks to the audience, trusting their intellect. It allows them to connect the dots without spoon-feeding them. That trust builds unity. Most disputes don't boil down to just the two players but involve the audience, who watches quietly. This tactic honors the observer's role. When blame arises indirectly, they panic, over-explain, and volunteer unasked for details. They try to clarify issues that didn't need explanation. Each effort to regain control deepens suspicion. When confronted directly, dirty players can pivot, deny, or counterstrike. Indirect redirection keeps you legally, socially, and reputationally safe. If challenged, it's easy to retreat to observation instead of accusation. This asymmetry safeguards you while pressure builds elsewhere. You're not igniting conflict or making claims you must later justify. Influence expands when force recedes. A ruler who permits others to question on their behalf secures compliance without resistance. Conversely, a ruler who accuses openly courts rebellion. Machiavelli observed that the most enduring power works quietly. You're not shoving blame, you're allowing gravity to handle it. Each mild statement, when combined, guides focus where it's needed. Interesting timing. That's an unusual interpretation. I'm not sure that aligns with what usually happens. These observations are framed as curiosity. Questions are especially potent here, not interrogations. The focus subtly shifts from defending your stance to exploring theirs. You comment on patterns rather than individuals, contexts rather than intentions, and settings rather than assertions. Indirect redirection dissolves the conflict. The moment you argue your innocence, the frame shifts to you versus them. Start by not centering yourself. This strategy works because blame isn't forced upon someone, it's discovered. When people arrive at conclusions without external pressure, those conclusions feel undeniable. The mind fills gaps faster than it processes instruction. Instead of making accusations, you redirect attention. You help observers recognize inconsistencies, incentives, and timing without directly stating them. What they aren't ready for is implication. Indirect redirection is subtler and far deadlier. Dirty players are set for confrontation, but what they don't expect is implication. Direct accusations may sound powerful but often lack effectiveness. To those who do see them, it becomes a map, and maps dictate outcomes. Predictability poses danger only to those who fail to recognize it. Don't try to outsmart them creatively, outlast them strategically. Power doesn't lie in knowing, it's in waiting to utilize that knowledge. This tactic demands patience and emotional detachment. Don't announce that you see the pattern, never reveal your perspective. Let them think they're unpredictable. Confidence in deception invites carelessness. Carelessness hastens ruin. Power shifts quietly. The aggressor comes off as reactive while you seem prepared. Observers pick up on this mismatch. By the time their action unfolds, it comes across as late, obvious, even embarrassing. There's a form of narrative insulation here. Once you anticipate their moves, you neutralize their effects ahead of time. Another benefit is narrative insulation. They're following a script, but you realize they're not responding to you, and you cease to personalize the attack. Once you grasp the pattern, the threat shrinks, almost mechanical-like. Fear dissipates, anxiety fades. There's a psychological transformation when you weaponize predictability. Anticipation takes the place of confrontation. A predictable enemy doesn't need to be defeated, they need to be guided into making their own mistakes. Machiavelli recognized that knowing your opponent better than they know themselves is the best way to defeat them. They'll start to feel exposed, even if they can't articulate why. If they provoke emotional responses, you maintain such calm that it becomes unsettling. If they lean on urgency, you slow the process down structurally. If they leak information informally, you control the environment so those leaks lose impact. Weaponizing predictability doesn't mean countering quickly, it's about positioning yourself a step ahead. At this point, you're no longer defending yourself, you're analyzing a system. As you understand their motives, attention, control, validation, fear, you can predict their next move with disquieting accuracy. Dirty tactics rarely appear random, they follow incentives. Don't disrupt the pattern with premature reactions, let it unfold. Watch their triggers, who they involve, the language they choose, and how they escalate when faced with no resistance. The first step is observing with no interference. Predictability turns threat into leverage. This repetition isn't a flaw to expose, it's a weakness to exploit quietly. People who lie, smear, or sabotage often rely on a consistent set of familiar tactics, as those have proven successful in the past. They recycle the same pressure points, timings, and emotional triggers. Dirty players think they're clever, but in truth, they're just repetitive. Manipulation isn't creativity, it's habit. People show their true selves when they believe no one is watching, and once exposed, they can't revert to their old ways. Allow them to push. Let them overstep. Let them escalate. When they go dirty, don't rush to reveal their tactics. Chaotic self-destruction offers clarity. Ending things early feels tidy, but clean conclusions often leave lingering doubts. The biggest challenge is resisting the desire to put an end to things. That asymmetry represents power. Your stillness costs you nothing. Each aggressive move depletes them. Importantly, escalation drains their resources, emotional energy, social capital, and credibility. Observers are primed to listen having witnessed their excess. When you respond, if it's necessary, it comes after a pattern has been established. You're not countering a single accusation, you're addressing a series of behaviors. Allowing them to escalate also protects your credibility. You simply remained consistent. You did none of this. What began as an attack gradually morphs into a confession. Distance serves as punishment. Interference often acts as mercy. Machiavelli understood that enemies reveal themselves when given the freedom to act. An unchecked enemy will show their character faster than any interrogation could. Their intention becomes clear. What initially seemed like concern unveils itself as control, animosity, or desperation. Their narrative becomes unstable, details waver, emphasis shifts, and contradictions arise. First, their tone sharpens. Calmness morphs into urgency, then aggression. Observers pick up on this change instinctively. As they ramp up tension, three things unfold. Small lies need constant upkeep, big lies crumble under their own weight, and complexity breeds inconsistency. Each additional move they make adds layers of complication. By not pushing back, you create a vacuum. They fill that vacuum with additional claims, more justifications, and further explanations. Moving too quickly interferes with their chance to expose themselves completely. It also signals fear, showing that their pressure is effective. Dirty players rarely aim for a single strike, their power builds through momentum. One lie invites another, and one manipulation requires reinforcement. Escalation becomes your evidence. When people descend into dirty tactics, instinctively, you'll want to halt the damage early, confront, correct, and defend your name before it's tarnished. That instinct feels protective but is strategically premature. Whoever explains the situation controls how it resolves. If you're the one explaining, you're no longer answering accusations. When you manage the narrative, facts stop trailing behind you, they align with you. Ownership of the narrative lasts over time. But discomfort is fleeting. You must endure periods where the surface story feels uneasy. It's important to resist the urge to correct every misconception. This takes discipline. Observers are influential here, often more than adversaries. Most aren't evaluating truth but rather assessing composure. The individual who seems to grasp the scenario at a deeper level, who discusses meaning over minutiae, naturally gains trust. This selectivity is authoritative. You dictate which aspects need highlighting and which are mere background noise. You decide what's central and what's incidental. This isn't manipulation for manipulation's sake, it's defense against those who already engage in manipulation. A ruler who can determine meaning controls loyalty, patience, and evaluation. Machiavelli understood that power is preserved not by being right but by being trusted. Once those questions take hold, facts realign themselves within your frame. Timing, patterns, incentives, history. You encourage observers to contemplate why things are happening at this moment, who benefits, and what it reminds them of. Instead of disputing specific claims, you set the framework in which those claims should be interpreted. The right move is to seize interpretation, not just evidence. If you rush into correct details, you confirm their framework. You then appear defensive, technical, and reactive, while they seem intuitive and confident. Dirty players recognize this. They leak fragments of truth, suggest motives, and let implications fill the gaps. Humans oftentimes don't assess information neutrally, they seek coherence with the existing narrative. Once that meaning is established, every subsequent detail will be viewed through that lens. A narrative answers a key question even before details are processed. What's really happening here? Is it incompetence, betrayal, insecurity, timing, jealousy, or politics? This is why controlling the narrative is far more lethal than simply winning an argument. Whoever frames the situation first dictates the understanding. Facts without context are raw materials, they seem potent, but rarely decisive. Narrative holds the actual power. You win by making the accusation irrelevant, you won't win by merely countering it. Allow intent to surface and let others draw conclusions without pressure. Innocence comes with power, guilt is implied in defense. When they resort to dirty tactics, don't rush to demonstrate your innocence. However, achieving clarity too quickly often means doing so on their terms. You must resist the impulse to set the record straight right away. This strategy necessitates restraint and discipline. It requires you to accept temporary ambiguity. People tend to align with that energy. Calm reframing conveys confidence to outside observers. Those observers outweigh the attackers. Most reputational damage arises not from the original claim but from how it's managed. Once you defend, you're tethered to a particular narrative and timeline. Reframing keeps you nimble. You may address the facts later if needed, but on your own terms when the situation isn't adversarial. Meanwhile, you stay composed, detached, and watchful. All of these reactions further weaken their position. They often escalate, over-explain, or get emotional. When their explanation doesn't materialize, their narrative collapses. The aggressor anticipates resistance. Reframing creates cognitive tension. It's not arrogance, it's a signal of authority. A ruler who reframes appears untouchable, while one who defends seems uncertain. Machiavelli understood that power belongs to those who define reality rather than those who argue within it. This subtly compels observers to evaluate the accuser instead of you. The focus shifts without contention. You allow others to raise questions you refuse to dignify, not through confrontation but through implication, tone, and clever redirection. You draw attention from the accusation to the motivation behind it. Reframing is deadly. Instead of addressing what they stated, you highlight why they said it. Even an impeccable defense signals vulnerability because powerful figures aren't expected to justify themselves. Each explanation you provide reinforces the notion that the accusation deserves attention. Dirty players don't attack the truth, they undermine perception. They sow doubt and then wait for you to confirm it through a serious response. Reframing is the antithesis of defense. It doesn't argue facts but shifts the narrative's focus. Defense recognizes that there's something to respond to. Defense is rarely neutral. The moment you defend, you step into their frame, and inside that frame, you're already at a disadvantage. When an accusation lands, many instinctively rush to defend themselves. They deny, articulate, justify, and clarify. This feels logical, honest, and necessary, yet it's precisely what the attacker wants. You win by withholding force. Patience leads to a stronger position. When you adopt a calm demeanor, you gather leverage. Delaying your response sharpens your stance, weakens theirs, and ensures that when you do act, you do so from a position of strength rather than chaos. The goal is to let uncertainty work against them. The right approach isn't to rush towards clarity. Power doesn't equate to comfort. They prioritize short-term relief over strategic advantage. Most people falter here. It requires resisting the fear of short-term reputational damage in favor of securing long-term dominance. By the time you speak again, the narrative may have already begun to shift, often without direct involvement on your part. You're closing the case, you're no longer addressing conjecture. When your words finally land, they carry more weight. This means responding only when the power dynamics tilt in your favor. Delay doesn't imply permanent silence, it shows you're operating from a higher perspective, unconcerned with distractions. Calmness conveys confidence. Stillness suggests authority. A delayed response also serves to protect your credibility. They escalate not due to strength but because they're losing control over the circumstances. When no reply surfaces, frustration builds. This robs them of emotional satisfaction. Manipulators thrive on reactions, anger, defensiveness, urgency. These signals validate that their tactics are working. There's a further benefit to taking your time. What starts as an attack gradually evolves into a confession. Delays allow patterns to emerge, alliances to take shape, and motives to clarify. To wait is to view the entire landscape. Acting too soon means moving without full visibility. Machiavelli understood that power lies not in relentless action but in timing. That's why restraint proves so potent. Each additional action they take without resistance raises the chance of making mistakes. They'll repeat accusations, exaggerate, and contradict themselves. Without intervention, they overextend. Dirty players rely on momentum. This imbalance induces anxiety in the aggressors. In contrast, you're unreadable. Silence crafts a balance. As they become exposed, vocal, and aggressive, you remain inscrutable. Reacting is a guise for activity. From that moment on, you're no longer taking action, you're simply responding. They rob you of your perspective and pull you into their narrative. You wind up addressing their interpretation of events on their clock, under the emotional strain they impose. Speed equates to leverage. Speed is never neutral. That impulsive urge to clarify, to correct, to defend your name before damage spreads feels rational, even responsible. Instead, you let them do it for you. You're not demolishing them, you're allowing their noise to grow louder, messier, and more obvious while you stay silent, composed, and untouchable. It's all about controlling the frame while they expose themselves within it. Power is about restraint in these moments. It's not a lesson in cruelty but rather in survival. Every word you use in defense tightens the noose they've engineered. The second you appeal to fairness, you admit weakness in a rigged game. The moment you emotionally react, you hand them the reins. That impulse is a trap. You feel the compulsion to clarify, to assert your innocence. That's where the panic begins. It's the one who smiles, agrees, and quietly destabilizes the ground beneath you just enough for you to lose your footing. Machiavelli cautioned that the most dangerous foe may not be the one who attacks openly, not due to lack of strength or intelligence, but because they're awaiting a reality that's no longer applicable. This is when most falter. But the instant they lie, smear, manipulate, or sabotage, the rules dissipate. When people play fair, power is predictable, rules exist, lines are apparent, and outcomes make sense.